where they've said I said things, like I may have said something hostile to a member of another band, but they've turned around.
In the world of rock and roll, there are feuds, and then there's Axl Rose. He's the man whose voice defined a generation and whose temper is the stuff of legend. One night in Montreal, his actions literally started a riot that caused millions in damages. But that was just one night. For some musicians, his anger went on for decades. While Axl has never actually published an official blacklist of his enemies, he really didn't need to. Through years of scathing interviews, rants on stage, and bitter legal battles, he's made it crystal clear who pushed him over the edge. Today, we're counting down the 6 musicians who earned the ultimate wrath of Axl Rose. Axl Rose is, without a doubt, one of the most iconic and mysterious frontmen in music history. With Guns N' Roses, he took over the world, mixing street-level grit with pure rock and roll royalty. But for every smash-hit anthem, there's a story of conflict. His famous temper wasn't just a rumor. It was a huge part of his public image, a destructive force that went after bandmates, rivals, and anyone else who dared to cross him. This isn't just some speculative list. We're taking a deep dive into the most intense, well-documented rivalries of Axl's career, pieced together from first-hand accounts and Axl's own fiery words. These are the stories of bruised egos, betrayed friendships, and culture clashes that defined a whole era of rock music. From Sunset Strip brawls to backstage award show showdowns, we're uncovering the history of Axl's most infamous feuds. Let's get into it. Kicking off our list is a feud born from the glitz and grime of the 1980 Sunset Strip, Axl Rose vs. Motley Crue's Vince Neil. This was way more than a rivalry, it was a clash of 2 of the biggest egos in rock, both fronting bands that were taking over the world. The start of their beef sounds like a scene ripped straight out of a rock and roll movie. It all reportedly started in 1988 at the Cat House, a legendary LA nightclub. The details change depending on who's telling the story, but it goes that Guns N' Roses guitarist Izzy Stradlin made a move on Vince Neil's wife at the time, Charlize Ruddell. In some versions, he's even said to have assaulted her. Whatever really happened, word got back to Vince Neil, and the fuse was lit. The tension simmered for months before it all blew up backstage at the 1989 MTV Video Music Awards. After Guns N' Roses performed, Neil was waiting. He confronted Stradlin and, by his own account, decked him with a punch, settling the score for what happened with his wife. This is where Axl Rose storms into the picture. He wasn't about to let a hit on his bandmate go unanswered. After the punch, Axl reportedly went nuts, hunting for Neil and threatening him. This personal fight was now a public war between the frontmen of 2 of rock's biggest bands. Axl took it to the press, publicly challenging Neil to a fight. In one famous interview, he laid it all out, saying, "Hey, Vince, whichever way you wanna go, man, guns, knives, or fists, whatever you wanna do, I don't care." The media, of course, had a field day. Vince Neil fired back on MTV, accepting the challenge and even suggesting a televised fight in a major arena. He called Rose a wimp and dared him to put up or shut up. For a minute, it seemed like the world might actually get to see a pay-per-view brawl between 2 rock gods, but it never happened. Despite all the public threats and challenges, the fight just stayed a war of words. Neil claimed in his memoir that Axl chickened out about a half-dozen times, setting up places to meet and then never showing up. The feud became a huge spectacle of ego and empty threats, perfectly capturing the over-the-top attitude of the time. While the intense heat eventually died down, the bad blood stuck around for years, a legendary standoff that defined the peak of their rockstar rivalry. If the feud with Vince Neil was all about ego, the war with Kurt Cobain was about beliefs. It was a total culture clash that pitted the old guard of stadium rock against the new wave of alternative grunge, with Axl and Kurt as their unwilling leaders. Believe it or not, it all started with Axl as a fan. He was an early supporter of Nirvana and was even photographed wearing a Nirvana hat in the "Don't Cry" music video. He really respected what they were doing and repeatedly invited Nirvana to tour with Guns N' Roses, an offer he also made for a joint tour with Metallica, but the feeling was not mutual. Kurt Cobain saw Guns N' Roses as everything he couldn't stand about the music industry, the over-the-top rock star machismo, the sexism, and what he saw as a lack of substance. He publicly said, "We're not your typical Guns N' Roses type of band that has absolutely nothing to say." To Kurt, rebellion meant standing up against bands like Guns N' Roses. The rejection was a major slap in the face to Axl, who did not take it well. Axl's admiration quickly turned sour. During a GNR concert, he went on a wild rant, calling Kurt a junkie with a junkie wife, referring to Courtney Love. He even made a disgusting comment about their newborn daughter, Frances Bean, saying that if she was born with defects, her parents should go to jail. The battle lines were drawn, and a public showdown felt like it had to happen. That moment came at the 1992 MTV Video Music Awards, a night that's now infamous in rock history. As Axl walked past Kurt, Courtney Love, and their baby, Courtney sarcastically yelled out, "Axl, Axl, do you want to be the godfather to our child?" Axl, surrounded by his security and then-girlfriend Stephanie Seymour, was not amused. He spun around and pointed a finger at Kurt, snarling, "You shut your bitch up, or I'm taking you down to the pavement." In a moment of pure, defiant sarcasm, Kurt turned to Courtney and deadpanned, "Shut up, bitch," before laughing right in Axl's face. The confrontation was a perfect snapshot of the two men. One driven by raw, explosive anger, and the other by sharp, cynical wit. The rest of the night was just full of tension. Nirvana bassist Chris Novoselic was reportedly harassed by Duff McKagan, and after Nirvana's performance of Lithium, drummer Dave Grohl repeatedly taunted Axl into the microphone, yelling, "Hi, Axl. Where's Axl?" Later, it was reported that Kurt, in a final act of rebellion, spit on what he thought was Axl's piano backstage, only to realize in horror that it was actually Elton John's. The feud never got a resolution. It ended tragically with Kurt Cobain's death in 1994, leaving the bad blood frozen in time. Axl Rose never made a public statement on his passing, a silence that spoke volumes and marked a sad end to one of the 90s' most bitter rivalries. The feud between Guns N' Roses and Metallica wasn't just a rivalry, it was a fight for the throne of heavy music. In the late 80s and early 90s, they were the two biggest bands on the planet, and their massive 1992 co-headlining stadium tour was supposed to be legendary. Instead, it became legendary for all the wrong reasons. According to GNR drummer Matt Sorum, there was always a bit of a competition. Both bands wanted to rule the world, and putting them on the same tour was like putting two alpha lions in the same cage. Axl himself reportedly dismissed Metallica as inauthentic and like cartoon characters. The tension finally exploded on August 8, 1992, at Montreal's Olympic Stadium. The night was just destined for chaos. During Metallica's set, a pyrotechnic charge went off at the wrong time, engulfing frontman James Hetfield in flames. He was rushed to the hospital with serious second-degree burns, and Metallica had to cut their performance short. The 53,000 fans were on edge, but they still had Guns N' Roses to look forward to. But, GNR was known for taking the stage late, and this night was no different. After a delay of over 2 hours, the band finally came out. But from the very start, something was off. Axl was complaining about sound issues, saying he couldn't hear himself through the monitors. He was also supposedly dealing with throat problems. After just a few songs, Axl had had enough. He told the crowd it would be their last show for a long time, slammed his microphone down, and walked off the stage. The band followed, the house lights came on, and the show was over. The crowd went insane. After being forced to wait for hours only to see a short set from both headliners, the fans' frustration turned into rage. A riot broke out. Thousands of people poured into the streets of Montreal, flipping police cars, smashing windows, and starting fires. The damage was estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the event became known as the Guns N' Roses riot. In the aftermath, the bands pointed fingers at each other. Metallica's members slammed Axl for being unprofessional. Kirk Hammett talked about the stress Axl's unpredictable behavior put on the tour. Lars Ulrich, in a TV interview, showed his disappointment. Axl, on his end, stuck to his story that the sound was terrible and that he couldn't go on without wrecking his voice. The incident cemented Axl's reputation as rock's most volatile and unpredictable star and drove a permanent wedge between the two biggest bands in the world. They may have shared a stage, but they would never again be on the same side. The creation of the supergroup Velvet Revolver should have been a major win. It brought together three key former members of Guns N' Roses, Slash, Duff McKagan, and Matt Sorum, with the famous Stone Temple Pilots frontman Scott Weiland. Instead, for Axl Rose, it was the ultimate betrayal, and he aimed a lot of his anger at the man who dared to take his place at the mic. Axl saw Velvet Revolver as a direct attack, a fraudulent version of his band fronted by a man he seemed to despise. The feud kicked off in 2006 when Axl's camp put out a bizarre press statement. It claimed that Slash had shown up at Axl's house at 5:30 in the morning to call a truce, and during this supposed meeting, Slash had trashed his own bandmates, calling Duff McKagan spineless and, most notably, Scott Weiland a fraud. Whether this late-night visit really happened is up for debate. Slash later denied it, but the damage was done. Axl had publicly thrown down the gauntlet, using Slash's supposed words to try and delegitimize the whole Velvet Revolver project and personally insult its singer. Scott Weiland did not take this lying down. He fired back with a scathing open letter of his own, aimed right at Axl. It was a masterpiece of rock and roll trash talk. Weiland wrote, "Get in the ring. Go to the gym, motherfucker, or if you prefer, get a new wig, motherfucker, you fat, Botox-faced, wig-wearin' fuck." He went on, attacking Axl's creativity by saying, "Don't think for a second we don't know where those words came from. Your unoriginal, uncreative little mind. The same mind that had to rely on its bandmates to write melodies and lyrics. Who's the fraud now, bitch?" The war of words was brutal and very public. Axl's assistant, Beta Liebes, shot back, claiming that Axl had no interest in Weiland and that Weiland had once ran out of a club the moment he saw Axl walk in. It was a clear attempt to paint Weiland as a coward, scared of a real confrontation. The feud showed Axl's deep-seated anger over what he saw as the theft of his legacy. Weiland, by fronting a band with Slash and Duff, had become the symbol of that betrayal. Interestingly, years later, after Velvet Revolver fell apart due to its own issues, Weiland seemed to have a change of heart. He admitted that after his own tough experiences with the former GNR members, he understood Axl a lot more. Tragically, like his contemporary Kurt Cobain, Scott Weiland's story ended way too soon. His death in 2015 brought a sad end to the conflict. In a surprising move, years later, the reunited Guns N' Roses performed the Velvet Revolver hit Slither, in tribute, a gesture reportedly started by Axl himself, a strange, complicated, and maybe final word on a bitter rock and roll feud. These feuds defined an entire era of rock and roll, fueled by ego, talent, and just pure chaos. But what do you think? Was Axl Rose a misunderstood genius surrounded by enemies, or was he a rock and roll tyrant who just created his own problems? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you love deep dives into music history and the stories behind the legends, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Not all of Axl's feuds were with outside rivals. Some of the most painful and damaging fights happened right inside Guns N' Roses. The falling out with original drummer Steven Adler is a tragic story of addiction, broken trust, and the end of the band's founding gang mentality. In the early days, Guns N' Roses was a solid unit, a brotherhood created on the streets of LA. But as their fame blew up, so did the pressure, and Adler's heroin addiction started to spiral out of control. It wasn't just a personal issue, it was seriously affecting his drumming. The band was trying to record what would become the Use Your Illusion albums, and Adler was struggling. The breaking point reportedly came during the recording sessions for the epic song, Civil War. Adler was having a really hard time playing the complex drum parts, needing dozens of takes. The band, including Axl, got more and more frustrated. They had given Adler multiple ultimatums: get clean, or you're out. He had been to rehab multiple times, but the addiction just wouldn't let go. Axl, in a now famous on-stage rant, had already warned the crowd, unless certain people in this band get their shit together, these will be the last Guns N' Roses shows you'll fucking ever see, a comment mostly aimed at Adler and Slash's drug use. In 1990, the band made the tough decision to fire him. Adler was devastated. He didn't just lose his job, he lost what he saw as his family. The aftermath was ugly. Adler filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against the band, saying they were the ones who got him into hard drugs and then kicked him out for using them. The legal battle dragged on, full of accusations and bitterness. For years, Adler was the forgotten member of the classic lineup, his story a warning about the dark side of rock and roll success. While Axl's relationships with other former members stayed cold, the fight with Adler was touched with a special kind of sadness. It was less about ego and more about the terrible results of addiction. Thankfully, this is one feud that has seen some level of resolution. After decades of public struggles and being apart, Steven Adler was invited to perform with Guns N' Roses as a special guest on several dates during their huge, Not in This Lifetime reunion tour. Seeing him back on the drums, playing alongside Axl and Slash, was a powerful and emotional moment for fans. It was a sign that some wounds, no matter how deep, could start to heal, offering a rare bit of reconciliation in Axl Rose's long history of conflict, and now, the one you've all been waiting for. The most iconic, most bitter, and most important feud in Axl Rose's life. This wasn't just a tiff with a rival or a problem with a bandmate. This was a war with his creative soulmate, his on-stage other half, Slash. In the beginning, Axl and Slash were the perfect rock and roll duo. The slithering singer and the cool, top-hatted guitar hero. Together, they were electric, a perfect mix of danger and swagger. But under the surface, their partnership was a slow-motion car crash of different personalities and creative ideas. The cracks started to show as Guns N' Roses went from a democratic gang to what many saw as Axl and his backing band. Axl's desire for more complex, piano-heavy epics clashed with Slash's bluesy, hard rock style. A major point of conflict was Slash's decision to work with Michael Jackson, an artist Axl couldn't stand. The arguments got more frequent, the silences longer. By the mid-90s, they were barely even talking. The final straw for Slash came while they were recording their cover of the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil. Axl apparently had another guitarist, Paul Huge, secretly re-record parts of Slash's solo, a huge insult to a guitarist of his level. Soon after, Axl gave the band a contract that would give him the exclusive rights to the Guns N' Roses name. For Slash, this was the end. He officially quit the band in 1996. What came next was almost 2 decades of pure hatred played out in the press. The war of words was non-stop. But it was Axl who delivered the most final, soul-crushing blow. In a 2009 interview, when asked about a possible reunion, Axl Rose said the words that seemed to slam the door shut for good. He said there was zero possibility of him ever working with Slash again. And then came the infamous quote, "In a nutshell, personally I consider him a cancer and better removed, avoided, and the less anyone heard of him or his supporters the better." He called Slash a whore for the limelight, whose playing had lost its edge. It was a brutal, personal, and what seemed like a final judgment. For years, that one word, cancer, defined their relationship. When Axl later famously said that a reunion would happen, not in this lifetime, it became the official final word for one of rock's greatest partnerships, and then, the impossible happened. In 2016, hell froze over. Axl Rose, Slash, and Duff McKagan reunited for the Not in This Lifetime tour, a name that cheekily referenced Axl's old statement. The tour became one of the highest grossing in music history, proving the lasting power of their chemistry. The war was over. While they may never be the brothers they once were, the fact that they can share a stage again after decades of such deep hatred is the most shocking end to Axl Rose's most feud. From Sunset Strip showdowns to deep, personal betrayals, the story of Axl Rose can't be separated from the stories of his fights. His career is proof that genius and volatility often go hand in hand. These feuds weren't just small arguments, they were huge events that shaped the world of rock music, creating legends, destroying friendships, and leaving behind a trail of unforgettable stories. But time has a way of cooling down even the hottest fires. The reunion with Slash and Duff, the guest appearances by Steven Adler, and even the Slither tribute to Scott Weiland all point to a man who has, maybe, found some peace in his later years. Axl Rose might always be rock and roll's most notorious frontman, but his journey shows that even in the world of Welcome to the Jungle, it's never too late for a little bit of Paradise City. Thanks for watching.